Don't accept jobs in the morgue. The ad itself made me shiver, but at the same time it was appealing. It said, earn $120 per night as a night guard in the morgue. Apply now. I'd been jobless for a while and had to afford to pay my rent and late bills, and with this kind of pay, I'd be able to leave like a king. So I applied hesitantly, half hoping I wouldn't get a response from the company. Not even 2 hours later, I got an email from the employer. Thank you for applying to our position of night guard in morgue. We are happy to inform you that your skills are suitable for our company and would hereby like to offer you a 1-year contract. If you agree to the terms below, please leave your signature via the online signature website listed below, and be it redacted by 10 p.m. tonight. You will receive a payment of $600 weekly on the provided bank account. Tonight. I thought it was a little too soon, but I didn't complain. I didn't know what to expect or who I'd meet there, so I put on my shirt and jeans and went to the address a little early. I was there at 9:40 p.m., and a middle-aged man who seemed to be a morgue worker greeted me. Hi. Ethan, right? I'm George. He shook my hand with a smile. I know you were probably sent here on short notice, but the security company whose services we employ was in need of a new guard for tonight's shift right away. So I'm outsourced from the security company to your morgue? I asked. That's right. You work for an outsourcing security company, and from what I hear, they pay pretty well. So who knows, you may get an even better position in the future. He winked. Right. So about the duties here. I started. Oh, that. No big deal, just make sure no one breaks in. He leaned in and said, we're out. We stared at each other for a moment, but then he chuckled and said, I'm just kidding. Well listen, my shift is over, so I'll be going now. Just sit tight in the office and relax until 6 a.m. That's when the first shift arrives here. And with that he left. I sat down by the desk in the office. I thought this probably isn't going to be so bad. There was a paper in front of me, and after observing it, I realized it was a list of rules addressed to me. It said, to the new guard, welcome to the company. Below is the list of rules for your job. 1. The first thing you should do is conduct a full sweep of the area to make sure nothing is out of the ordinary, including the crypt. Important note. If any of the body chambers are pulled out in the crypt, push them back in. They should remain pushed in at all times. 2. After the sweep you may remain at the office until the end of the shift. There were more rules listed below, but I decided to first check the place out. It was fairly small, with one big room that had medical supplies in it, the crypt and a bathroom. I first decided to get the worst out of the way, the crypt. I left the office and opened the sturdy crypt door, immediately getting hit by a wave of cold air. Inside were 2 body carts in the middle of the room and cold chambers on the walls. All of them were closed, so I hastily left the room. On my way back from the bathroom, I saw a man in a lab coat standing in the medical room. He was fiddling with some of the tools next to a body bag. Jesus, you scared the hell out of me, I said. He shot me a bemused glance and working. I thought everyone left already. My name's Ethan, I'm the new guard. I said, but again, he simply ignored me. I waved my hand in dismissal and returned to the office. I was about to continue reading the rules when there was a sudden creaking sound reverberating throughout the building. It was faint, but it sounded like the pipes. It intermittently lasted for a few seconds and paused just as long. I ignored it and slacked some more, checking out my phone. But the longer the creaking lasted though, the more I got unnerved because they sounded less like pipes and more like moans. I got out to ask the employee about that, but he had already gone home by then. I couldn't tell where exactly the sound was coming from, but it sounded like the crypt, so I went there. As soon as I opened the door, the whole building went silent. I held my breath as I observed the room, and then realized that one of the body drawers was pulled out slightly. I pushed it back in and bolted back to the office. The creaking was completely gone by then. I continued reading. 3. You may sleep in the office, but it is inadvisable just then. The loudest sound just about made me jump out of my skin. Please. Someone let me out. The voice cried from somewhere, and the pipes carried his voice. I stood up, heart racing. Let me out, I can't breathe. The voice repeated, now followed with a series of loud bangs. I opened the office door, and the screams were apparently coming from the crypt. I shuddered, but decided to open the door. I'm not dead, this is a mistake. Someone. The voice got louder as soon as I opened the sturdy door. Where are you? I frantically looked around, while the man continued screaming bloody murder and banging. I approached the source of the sound and leaned in to listen and make sure that this was the right chamber. I'm not dead. Let me out. Please. The voice and the banging suddenly stopped when I abruptly pulled out the drawer and was met with the cold, dead body of a middle-aged man. I stood there, staring at the corpse, my mind unable to comprehend what just happened. I heard it very clearly, felt the banging as I held the drawer handle, and then it was as if someone just shut it off abruptly. Was my mind playing tricks on me? I pushed the drawer back in and bolted out of there, shutting the office door, and thinking that applying here may have been a bad idea. I felt like I was on needles, but convinced myself after a while that it was all in my head. I continued reading the rules. 4. You may play music to kill the silence, so long as it doesn't drown out any outside noises. 5. If you hear incoherent sounds coming from the crypt, you can ignore them. 6. If those sounds turn into panicked screams, do the following. 1. If the screams are female, ignore them until they stop. Do not enter the crypt during this time under any circumstances. 2. If the screams are male, locate the source of the screams and pull out the body drawer. This should stop the screaming. The page ended there. I placed the paper down and leaned back in the chair. It was 1 a.m. I started feeling sleepy. After a while, my eyes started to shut. Just as I started drifting into dream, I felt a firm grip from behind on my shoulder. I instantly shot up, knocking the chair down in the process. No one was there. I no longer felt sleepy. Everything was quiet for a while and I went to the bathroom once more. When I returned, it was 4 a.m. and I was pretty much ready to end the shift here. I started thinking how it wasn't so bad for $120 until I flipped the paper with the rules and realized there was something else written on the back. 7. All the staff will be out of the building by 10 p.m., so if you see a man in a lab coat during your shift, do not under any circumstances try to talk to him. I reread the rule 5 times over, but the text remained the same. There was a gentle knock on the office door. I looked up and through the glass I saw the man in the lab coat grinning at me. It's 4:30 now and he keeps knocking. Graveyard shift workers of Reddit, what is the weirdest or creepiest thing you experienced while on the job? So, I used to work as a graveyard custodian in a building by myself. Now, when I started I was told that the building was pretty weird and that I should stay on my toes. I call bullshit, but after working there for a year I was pretty much convinced something weird was happening. I'll break down what happened into a couple of stories. 1. I was riding the elevator to a different floor, but instead of going to that floor it went straight into the basement. The doors open and they are open for maybe 10 seconds or so, and I can't see anything in this room. All of a sudden a dark figure starts walking towards the elevator, and I freaked the foo out. I hit the doors to close, and the figure just kept getting closer. I ended up standing outside of the building for a half hour or so while the police searched the basement. What really freaked me out is that the one entrance into the basement was locked and barred, and they didn't find anyone down there after searching everywhere. 2. I was standing in a room cleaning a whiteboard, and suddenly I heard what sounded like a little girl laugh behind me. This was a university, so there shouldn't have been any kids in the building, and the building was closed anyway. What really freaked me out is I could hear footsteps running down the hall towards the door for the basement, but instead of sounding like kid feet, it sounded like something that weighed 400 pounds was running at a full sprint. 3. The one thing that really sucked is that no matter where you were in the building, you would always feel like you were being watched. It was a feeling I could never shake, and I had been told by my boss that just about everyone who has worked in that building has felt the same way. So, that's it. It was pretty weird and I ended up asking for a transfer to the sister building, so I could get away from whatever was going on in that building. So yeah, buckle up. This happened almost 20 years ago now. Wow, has it been that long? Still a pretty vivid memory. I was working the overnight shift, 11 p.m. 7 a.m. at an animal shelter. It was a pretty big place, sort of C-shaped, with the lobby, offices and puppy pen in the curve, exam rooms and kennels in the tips, and an outdoor walking area in the middle. Most nights I was alone in the building and sat at a desk all the way in the back of the building, behind the reception counter, but with a direct line of sight to the glass front doors. The building was sort of set back from the parking lot and down a hill, so you had to walk down a straight 100 sidewalk to get to the front door. Normally I would download music, Napster, baby. Put a speaker up to the intercom, and sit out front getting baked to some sweet tunes. My only duties were to monitor the emergency phone line. The intercom also allowed me to hear the ringing, walk through and check on the animals now and then, and do some basic filing. Once in a while I would grab one of the dogs to come hang out for part of my shift. I've always liked animals, had several dogs and many cats over the course of my childhood, and they've generally always liked me. Anyway, so the rare time someone came in it was to drop off an animal they either found or could no longer care for, whatever the reason. I was always happy to take them in, make them as comfortable as possible, and just try to be a temporary buddy. Except when it was feral cats or fighting dogs, those needed special treatment, and it was always both heartbreaking and a royal viewing pain in the ass. This night, I wish it had been one of those. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I had just finished smoking a cigarette out front and came back to my desk. I sat down to turn off the intercom and noticed a woman running full speed down the sidewalk toward the front door. When she got there she started banging on it and buzzing the intercom over and over again, and I could see tears streaming down her face. She finally noticed me coming toward the door and started to compose herself. When I opened up and asked what was wrong, she asked if she could come in. For whatever reason I said sure, even though she clearly didn't have an animal with her, and had no idea what the problem was yet. I went around behind the reception counter while she grabbed some tissues and dried her face. I asked again if she was okay and if I could help. No strange vibes. She walks up to the counter and tells me that she needs her cat back. Now, I do have keys to all of the kennels and access to all of the paperwork, but it is definitely prohibited to return an animal without following the process. A process I cannot complete by myself in the middle of the night. I calmly explain that she'll have to come back during regular hours the next day. Here's where it goes downhill. She goes on to say, no, she had the cat put down there earlier that day. She wants the body. She thought about it and wants to give Kitty a proper burial. I don't know to this day if they denied her taking it initially and she came during the night for a reason, but she started the crying bit again and I'm a sucker, so I actually agreed and went looking. They kept the dead animals in oil drums. Just like Walter White's money barrels, thrown inside just as haphazardly as those bills. They sat in the freezer along with deer that had been hit on various roads that day, and dropped off by the independent dead deer guy, who apparently did nothing but collect dead deer and drop them in our freezer. I told her I would be willing to go and retrieve the animal, but she better give me the most accurate viewing description of a cat any human has given another, because she would be receiving the one and only cat I brought out. Turned out, it was a pretty good description, and I found her cat in the second barrel, but not without some digging. I wrapped it in a towel and some plastic, frozen solid, and sent her on her way. I can still smell that freezer today, and I highly discourage the practice of rummaging through animal corpses. TLDR worked overnight in an animal shelter. Woman came to get her cat back. Turned out it was a cat that was put down, and she wanted the body for burial. I delivered.